Great. We are now being recorded. Hello, everyone. My name is Natasha Bean, and I am the Program Director for Financial Education here at NYU. This webinar is returning from a leave of absence, and I'm here with my two colleagues, Lester Elliott, counselor from the Financial Aid Office, Husky Abdelkader, Client Relations Liaison from the Office of Financial Aid, and we have a lot of information to tell you regarding leave of absence, returning from leave, how to make sure that you are set up to understand your finances and what your next steps will be. So again, we will be taking questions at the end. There are a few that were already pre-submitted, but we will take questions at the end. On top of that, add them to the chat. And this recording will be put on one of our channels so you can refer to it at a later date. So our agenda for today will be understanding your finances, preparing your finances for return, your financial aid responsibilities if you have financial aid, what's next, and then some Q&A. So understanding your finances. So while you're away from NYU, there are a lot of things to think about. You need to think about, your costs, like were there any costs that you are now required to pay as you are attempting to come back to NYU? So fees to rematriculate to the university, maybe you have to pay for your own health insurance at this point. But we hope that while you are away from the university, whether it was one semester or a full year leave of absence, that you were able to take advantage of like getting the rest that you needed, but also being financially prepared for when you need to come back to the university. Some of the things we want you to think about also is, did you have a prior balance when you left the school here? Do you owe money to NYU that may prevent you from actually, re-registering? And have you been saving for different things that you might need to pay for regarding coming back, like different books that you might need or different computer actual expenses or like traveling? Some people might be studying remote and staying where they are, but some might be attempting to come to campus in a social distance way. Like, will you have to pay for your own traveling expenses? And they're just miscellaneous things that you would have to think about. So while you were on a leave of absence, you were leave from the university, you still are an important part of the university. And we want to make sure that you have these things in mind as you are coming back. One of the things I want you to think about with understanding your finances, that if you are a student that had student loans prior, which means you borrowed them maybe as an undergraduate student and now you're a graduate student, and or you are an undergrad student who had loans last year or a few years ago, if you used student loans in the past, then you may currently be in what's called your grace period. Your grace period is pretty much when you leave school or drop below half-time enrollment. You have about a 6-month time period where you are not required to pay back your loans. That is grace. That's usually for folks like when you graduate, 6 months after you graduate, you don't have to pay your loans. That's for you to look for a job, get your budget together, and get prepared to pay your loans. But if you took a leave, that may count as your grace period. And what that means is that, yes, you're not required to pay back your loans, but now that you are back in school, you only get this 1 6-month grace period. So it's something to keep in mind. Is like, oh, wait, I'm coming back to school. How do I put my loans back on like a status where I do not have to repay them? Now, you're probably saying like, wait, I've been out of school for a little bit longer than 6 months and I still didn't have to pay my loans. What's up with that? So when you think about it right now during this pandemic, during COVID-19, the federal government temporarily suspended payments and interest accrual on the federal loans until the end of this year, so until December 31st of 2020. What does that mean? That means as of January 2021, as it stands now, your loans will go into a repayment status if you um, were supposed to be paying them. So that's something to keep in mind. Like, oh, wait, if I'm about to start school and my loans are going to into repayment, what do I have to do to keep them that way? But so during this time, you may not have to pay loans because of this pandemic, and we were in non-payment and non-interest accruing status on your loans federally. But that may change as of December 31st. So when you're thinking about, what do I have to prepare so that way I can return? Like what things I have to do? there's a couple of people that you should be speaking to and understand, like, well, what is going to be my actual cost here at the university? There's a couple of ways that you look at that. What do I have to pay for my tuition and fees? Am I going to be full time? Am I going to be part time? Did I switch programs while I was away? Are there going to be any other things that you have to think about paying? You have to think about your housing, like how much is that going to cost, food costs. So you have to think about all of those costs that you may have to account for as you're paying to go for school this upcoming semester. Have you planned for unexpected costs, like thinking about technology? Your computer might have been great before, but now you might need to, get a different programming or a second monitor. What does that cost look like? Now you need to have your personal protective equipment wherever you go on campus and around, masks, gloves, hand sanitizer, all of that stuff. That needs to be factored into your costs. And then thinking about food and having access to healthy meals, um, being able to pay for food deliveries or different places that you may have to go, or cooking more depending on if you're staying in an apartment or in your home. That is something you have to think about as you are planning about the cost and the tuition and fees and all those other things. So keep those all in mind as you're debating financial aid to use, maybe loans, savings if you have them to use. But those are things we want you to think about. So we're going to talk about your financial aid responsibilities.
All right, everyone. Again, my name is Lester, as Natasha mentioned earlier. I'm going to be talking about the financial aid responsibilities here at NYU. So first things first is your financial aid checklist, or what you guys would call your to-do list on your Albert portal. There's a couple of things you would need to do to ensure there's a smooth transition back to school for spring 21 semester. So for example, filing your 2021 FAFSA is the first thing. We cannot award Fed aid if you don't have your FAFSA on file one. Now, if you already filed your FAFSA for 2021, it should already still be there. There shouldn't be any issues there. The second thing was also make sure that your graduation date is updated in your Albert. So for example, if you were expected to graduate in 2020, a fall semester, you won't be able to get awarded any years prior because the system is thinking that you already graduated. So that's an important thing that you would need to do before we do anything as far as awarding goes. The second thing that's going to also be in your to-do list is your academic progress, or your SAP. So if you were previously on an academic probation, or if you were previously not meeting your academic progress, that would be available on your to-do list to do. So if you still have that as an option on your to-do list, you should call the Office of Financial Aid to see if you have any other questions, or you can just sit there and submit the progress appeal with your academic advisor. Another thing here is the other FAFSA requirements. So sometimes we have students that have a verification that is outstanding, and then they go on a leave of absence. The verification would still need to be done upon your return. Otherwise, we would not be able to award federal aid. This is very important because there is a time frame in which we can do this. So if you still have a verification, which would also be in your to-do list on your Albert, that needs to be done. And if you have any questions, again, you can also call the financial aid office and a counselor could assist. Next slide. All right, just a couple things to remember. Again, I touched on the fact that we cannot award anybody if they do not have their graduation date updated. This does not just include federal aid, this is also scholarships. Now, typically, scholarships are automatically enrolled, are automatically applied. They don't require like your FAFSA for that year or verification per se. But if you don't see it for whatever reason, you can let us know by calling us or emailing the office, the financial aid office, so that we can assist. The only thing I would say about the scholarship is it really is dependent on enrollment. So for undergrads, if you're not at the minimum requirements, or if you're not at full time, I should say, your scholarship will be adjusted, but that would be natural whether or not you were on a leave or not. Now, the loan deferments, we cannot certify your loan deferments until you're returning your enrolled at least half time. That is not something we can really control. We have to make sure that that enrollment is already there before that loan deferment can actually be in effect due to federal guidelines. Next slide. All right, and Natasha is going to talk about what's next as far as your financial education.
Okay, so what's next? So now that you're ready to return, the first thing we always say is you might need to speak to your academic advisor or school contact to make sure that, hey, this is the semester you want to return. You may have already decided to take a one semester return or a full year leave. Um, that's fine. You need to speak to your academic advisor or school contact to make sure that there is any requirements outstanding that you might have to do. I also say, if you don't know who your academic advisor is, or maybe they've switched schools or they've left as well, have a conversation with our student success office. Student success is a office that's here in order to help you be successful in your education. So we want you to make an appointment via NYU Connect. It's on your NYU in your home center, and basically you can meet with one of the student success specialists in order to help you navigate who your academic advisor is, or look at your transcripts to make sure, like, hey, everything is reported as it should be, or even refer you to the different offices that you may need. So if you just have a little bit of questions on where should I start, you can always speak to a student success specialist. And we always say check your student center, the Albert Student Center, for any holds and required paperwork. As Lester said, that it is important if you see a hold up there or something that is required, that will prevent you from receiving financial aid, that will prevent us from certifying certain things for you. So keep up to date to your NYU email, because we usually send reminders that said, hey, these things need to be done in order for you to get your aid, or for us to process things. So your hold center, require paperwork, turn that into us before the time that you need it. Like, so before when your bill is actually going to be due. So right now we have a website full of resources and tips for students who are on leave of absence. That website will be dropped into the chat, but pretty much the website in and of itself tells you how to meet with a student success specialist. It gives you ways that you can make the most of a leave of absence. We have some tips in here from financial education about things and steps that you could take. We also have resources available for while you were on leave, and then some steps to take, and even the email samples in case you needed to reach out to certain offices. Like, here's a sample that you can use, a template, in order to reach out to maybe financial aid or maybe to academic advisor with some questions. So visit that website. It is helpful. It'll be up here for you, and it's something that you could always refer back to in case you need it. So now we have some question and answer, and so the panelists will be unmuting themselves and answering some of the questions that were listed for us.
So the first question is, when should I receive my financial aid offer? So for international and domestic students, scholarships should automatically be posted as long as your graduation date doesn't show fall 2020. So if you indicate it's spring 2021 and further, then your scholarship should automatically be renewed. For domestic students who filed FAFSA, you should also be awarded your federal aid for the spring semester. If in either of these cases, if you're not, I would recommend highly to reach out to our office to indicate that you are returning in the spring semester or in the fall, or whatever semester you decide to return. As for some graduate students, they may need to speak to the department, but as long as they indicate that they are returning in the spring, then we can award them federal aid based off their enrollment. And then when is the spring bill due? So the spring bill goes out for undergraduates on December 14th of this year, and then it's due January 7th, 2021. As for graduate students, it comes out in January. Let me get the exact date. It comes out on January 5th, and it's due on February 2nd.
All right, and for the next question, what if I'm experiencing financial challenges due to extenuating circumstances? So for undergrads, we still have the undergraduate financial appeal that can be found in the Albert Student Financials tab. The appeals are generally available for expenses or any unforeseen changes in family or changes in anything with your budget. So you can submit that appeal. We're still in round one. That deadline is November 29th. So that is still available for you. And there is a second round that starts shortly after the November 29th deadline. Now, for grads, there isn't a a undergraduate appeal, of course. But if you are experiencing any type of difficulties or any type of extenuating circumstances, you may contact the Office of the Financial Aid, and we can go over some of the different options that you do have available to us.
All right. Right now, so this is a financial education question, particularly for loans. Right now, I'm not paying my student loans back. However, my first payment is due January 10th. Do I have to start repaying my loans even though I will be back in school in the spring semester? So the answer for this is a little bit tricky, but I'm going to go with yes. The reason why is school starts the end of January, late January, January 20 something, and your payment is due the 10th, which means your payment is due before school starts. And as Lester mentioned, we cannot certify your in-school enrollment until school starts and until at least you have time. Now, if you cannot make payments due to unforeseen circumstances, due to your income, you will most likely have to request a forbearance with your lender in order for them to not require you to make that payment. You have up to 3 years of forbearance that you can actually use, and it would be economic hardship. But you would basically tell them, even for this 1 month, I need 1 month of forbearance in order for your payments to go back into an in-school deferment status. So the answer is, if your payment is due before you are back in school, then technically you are required to make that payment. And where can I look for more scholarships? Because we know school does cost money, and you want to see, well, where can you get additional scholarships? We have a list of scholarship search services that are on our website. One of them is iGrad. iGrad is a financial literacy resource that you have access to through your NYU Home Center. It is very easy to navigate, but they have a search service on there that kind of weeds out different scholarships, and you could kind of look for things based on your major, based on your GPA. So iGrad is definitely one of them, but we have a list of scholarship search services that will be placed in the chat for you. And that will be, you can navigate from the financial aid or financial education website. But it's always good to look for scholarships, not just your first year, even in graduate school, that could help with your cost of attending the school. And then how can I contact your offices to speak to a counselor? So
So
if you, go ahead.
yeah, so so if you would like to speak with a financial aid caller, you can call us at 212-998-4444, and you can email us at financial.aid@nyu.edu. Of course, on the phone, we're right away from 9 to 5, and then the financial aid email, we usually respond in 2 days. As far as the Zoom appointments, we are still taking Zoom appointments. You can, if you go on the nyu.edu website, or we can include a link in the chat. If you type in speak with a counselor, that link to schedule the Zoom appointment will be there. But again, we can't link that into the chat later.
And to speak to a financial education coach, you can make an appointment with us through NYU Connect. The Connect card, I'm showing what it looks like here, but that's right inside your NYU Home Center. You could also email us at financial.education@nyu.edu with any questions. We do make Zoom appointments based on your schedule and availability, and we could talk about budgeting. We could talk about the aid that you have received. We could talk about your costs. So our education courses can look and help you kind of navigate and make a plan for you to return. So those were the questions that were pre-submitted, and we know that there were some questions dropped inside the chat. So we could go ahead, and we have a couple of people here to help us. We have Ariana Monzo. She's a graduate assistant in our Office of Financial Aid and Financial Education to help. And we have an Assistant Director of Client Relations, Dennis Moore, here to assist with the chat. If y'all could alternate taking questions or send it to us, however you want to do that.
Sounds good. So we're going to just go over them based off of how they were received. So the first question that we have is around the grace period. So the question is, if I'm not sure how much time I have left on my grace period, how taking a leave will impact me, do I contact the Office of Financial Aid or the loan servicer?
You should definitely contact the loan servicer because they can see when the last time they received communication from the institution to say you were in school. So for example, let's say you were in school as of, May 2019, which is over a year ago. They can say, okay, we received from NYU that you last attended school May 2019. These are how many months that you were out of school. And this is when your grace period has ended, and this is when you entered into repayment, technically. So you could definitely reach out to them. Also, there's a way for you to look at this information. It's called the National Student Loan Data System. Um, they have all your tracking of your loan amounts at the very least that you can see. And there's something called the National Student Loan Clearinghouse, which is where we send your enrollment information. Students do have access to the clearinghouse just to see when the university last submitted their enrollment as well. So there's a couple of places where you can see, and we'll probably link those or send them out as a resource afterwards.
Okay, so the second question we have is, if I already had a grace period during my leave this semester, will I have another one lasting 6 months for federal loans after I graduate?
The answer is you will not have another one for the prior loans that you had out. So for example, let's say you had 1 year at NYU and then you took a grace period and you took out loans last year. That means you used this grace period for those particular loans, your first year loans. But now when you're back in school and you're taking out loans the second year, the third year, and the fourth year, you don't, leave school on a leave again, you will have a grace period for those remaining loans because you never utilized it for those remaining loans. But that first year loan would become due when you graduate, if that makes sense.
Okay, and the next question is, does the government have any plans to allow students taking a leave this year to preserve their grace period given the pandemic and all?
At this current time, which is November 18th, there is no current plans for that to happen. However, things are changing. We hopefully will be getting a new Secretary of Education. And so that might change what happens with the loans, but currently there is no plans in place.
Okay, thank you. And the next question we have is, I have an outstanding bursar hold when on SAP, which is satisfactory academic progress. What are options for possible financial assistance or scholarships?
Financial aid, do you want to take this one?
So if you're on SAP, then our recommendation is to first check with the financial aid office to see if you qualify for a SAP appeal. If the outstanding balance is from a prior semester and because we can't retroactively award federal aid, then you might have to work out something with the bursar's office to pay off that balance. My recommendation is when you decide to return, you can try to offset some of these costs by maybe doing the financial aid appeal on Albert to try to, offset it with additional scholarship in future semesters.
Thank you. And so the next question is, our grad student offers one appeal submission?
So grad students aren't offered the undergrad appeal. Typically, if they are looking for some additional scholarship assistance, you can also use the outside scholarship in the financial education that Natasha spoke on earlier, or you can contact the actual graduate admissions office for your specific school to see if there's any additional scholarship opportunities.
Thank you. The next question is, are there other sources of aid at NYU for international students excluding traditional financial aid?
Well, we do have the outside scholarship search service that's available that has lots of scholarships for international students as well. NYU scholarship is very limited. I know it was based on the CSS profile review for undergraduate students. For graduate students, it is based on the availability from the different schools. But we have lists of outside scholarship sources that do assist undergraduate international students and graduate international students on our website.
Thank you. The next one is, if I have the student health insurance, can I have access to the student health center during my leave?
That's a great question, and I will definitely refer that to the Student Health Center because I know they do have, if you've paid their insurance, they may be able to do that, but there are some things that are specific per plan as a student. So you should definitely speak to the Student Health Center regarding what that actually covers while you are on leave as well.
Thank you. And so the next question is, what's the difference between a financial aid counselor and a financial aid coach?
Well, they're financial education coaches and financial aid counselor. So I'll talk about the financial ed coach. The financial education coach is someone who is helping you build a plan with your current finances in order for you to get to whatever your financial goals are. So let's say your goal is to graduate with not a lot of student debt, be able to get a decent enough job in order to pay the bills that you're going to incur, maybe eventually buy a house and a car, stuff like that. So understanding your credit score, understanding the debt that you currently have, what moves that you should be making as far as different payment plans. That's what the coaches do. We're here to help you achieve your goals in that way. Financial aid, they are counselors there to counsel you on the aid that you may be eligible for. So they review all your documentation. They review like if you submitted FAFSA, if you need to be verified, and then in conjunction with other folks, they create the financial aid package for you. They can explain to you what the loan is. They can explain to you all of the terms and conditions of the loan, and then but they're helping you take out the things that you need to go through school. With that information, we in education say, okay, do you understand the terms definition, your APR? Do you understand the interest rate? Do you understand what deferment is? And we make sure with that, you can understand financially how this affects you going forward. So we work very closely together.
Thank you. And the next question, there's two. So the first question is the iGrad scholarship page similar to the FAFSA scholarship during admissions?
No, it is not. The iGrad Scholarship Search Service is pretty much available at any time. You can look for it now, you can look for it in a week, but the scholarships that are listed on iGrad are submitted, they're vetted through iGrad. So there's a lot of scholarship services that are reaching out to NYU. It says, hey, submit this for your students. And we want to make sure that they are not scams. We want to make sure that they are relevant and they are something that would benefit our students. So we submit them to iGrad, they vet the organization, and then students have to go on there and apply. They might have to write an essay, they may have to submit like their grades, but these scholarships are things that can help students pay for school. They might be little amounts, maybe $1,000 here and there, but if students do a couple of these or more than a couple of them, that could help them with their personal expenses, with their fees, with different things that they might need. I always advise students to look at scholarships now and then see what has already closed as well. Like you may be qualified for a scholarship that their deadline was September 1st. Well, keep that in mind for next year and see if you're available to apply for it at that point, because you never know if you don't apply.
And then the next one is how do you apply for NYU scholarships versus other scholarships database via Google?
All right, so I'll get that one. So the NYU scholarships are, well, for an undergrad, you are applying for them upon admission. So your CSS profile and your Common App will determine the merit and the need-based aid. The outside scholarship via the database via Google or NYU's database of outside scholarship have their own parameters and have their own requirements for each individual organization that a student can utilize to help them pay for the cost of their education.
Thank you. The next question is, if you received a state grant during the semester of your leave of absence, would it be possible to transfer that grant to the semester you return?
The answer to that is no, because state grant, like Pell Grant as well as scholarship, is semester specific. So you're only eligible for a certain duration or amount of, let's say TAP, for example, you're eligible for up to 10 semesters. So you need to fully utilize it per semester, which means if there's no enrollment, you can't transfer it to a different semester. You have to use it while you're enrolled.
Thank you. The next question is, how does returning from a leave as a part-time student, so not a full-time student, affect my financial aid? Will I receive enough federal aid to cover the costs like before?
So if you are part-time and not at least half-time, you won't be eligible for federal aid. If you are a grad and you are part-time, you can seek a half-time equivalency or full-time equivalency to make you eligible for federal aid. Otherwise, the aid will be canceled if anything is below halftime.
I'll add on to that. If you're taking 6 or more credits, so if you're taking below 12 but more than 6, we also prorate scholarship, and at that point you would be eligible for federal aid. Obviously, it's going to lead to a decreased cost of attendance, so it might not look like a full-time student package, but you would still be awarded federal aid as well as scholarship based on eligibility.
Right. So it's very important for us to be aware of how many credits you're taking. So part-time is under 6 credits. Half-time is 6 to whatever, 6 to 11, and full-time is 12 or more. And that's generally what it's like for undergrad and grad. And so it's important for us to be aware of what you're taking, so that way we know if you're now taking 6 credits as a graduate student, what you're eligible for. If you're taking 6 credits as an undergrad, what you're eligible for. If you're taking 3 credits as a grad or undergrad, what you may not be eligible for. So when you're trying to figure out what your schedule looks like, and or what re-entering NYU looks like after you've had the conversation with your academic advisor, definitely contact the financial aid office, so that way they can tell you, look, at this credit ratio, you're going to get something, you're going to get nothing, etc. And we can help you just make that financial decision.
Thank you. And so then the last question that we have is, I'm a grad student, but only taking loans out for grad school. If I go on leave, does that use some of my grace period for my current grad school loans?
Yes, that is correct. So if you do go on leave, which means you're out, you're not enrolled at any institution at least half time, then yes, you will start your grace period, and that is 6 months for your grace period. And if you're going leave, let's say you're going on leave for the spring semester, as an example, then pretty much in June is when you will be contacted by your lenders that said, hey, you've utilized your grace period and now your payments start. Here's a payment plan. Contact us if you have any questions. So that's usually like a 1 semester leave. If you're still on leave for a full year, you will still get contacted after that 6 months, and you can let them know that you're still on leave, but you are required to make your payments or seek the forbearance like I had spoke about earlier. So pretty much it is basically a way for you to be, so like 6 months is the grace period, is the only thing that you're eligible to have. And it is once you leave school half time. So they don't even say graduate, it's graduate or leave school half time. That's when you're able to, that's when you utilize that. Hopefully that makes sense.
Thank you. So those were all the questions that were submitted. On the chat, Husni did provide a link so that you can see how to schedule an appointment with a financial aid counselor. And I also provided a link to our financial education website, so you can get more information on the resources that Natasha shared, as well as schedule an appointment with the financial education coach. And I also provided the link to the iGrad website, where you can search more scholarships and just get more information about the different resources that iGrad offers.
And yes, thank you very much for attending this presentation. There will be a survey that will be emailed to everybody that was attending this presentation, just a brief little survey to see if there was any other additional questions that you may have, that you can reach out to us. It will, if it's not already in the chat, then it will be emailed to everybody. But thank you very much for the presentation. This is our social media for financial aid and financial education, our websites here, as well as ways that you could contact us.